OP09 Emperors in the New World is officially out in the One Piece trading card game. As many of you probably by now have opened your boxes, done all your pre-release events, and have started to sort your bulk, especially as a competitive player, you always need to know what cards you need exactly and what amount of each card you need. Now, although I will always recommend that you should just buy 4 of each card, every single set, any card that comes out, that's not financially viable for everyone. So just like every other set, I've compiled a buy list, organizing cards within this set in terms of tier of importance and also amount. I've also got a Google spreadsheet that is made public to everyone who wants to view this visually for themselves. And I add a new tab for every single set. So if you get this link now, you'll be able to have this for as long as I'm making these videos, right? But before we get into that, let's talk to our sponsor. If you're looking to bling out and have sleek new additions to your accessories for your decks, playmats, sleeves, etc., go ahead and check out Sleeve Chief. Sleeve Chief recently during the holidays released 30 new products on their website for you to get right now. If you love having custom Dawn sleeves, they've got excellent new Dofi, God of Thunder, Gear 5, even the Mochi Demon and Law sleeves just look so good. If you like having an entire theme of deck box, playmat, border sleeves, Dawn sleeves, they've got a Flame Brothers bundle that looks so good, all centered around one of the more popular characters in the game, Ace. Hanging out with Luffy and Sabo in some of the designs as well. You can even get little Den Mushi, which are really great like stocking stuffers if you're looking for one. Various playmats and gorgeous deck boxes on their website. If you're interested in any of these things, make sure to use code Atrocious at checkout for 5% off your order. Not only would you be helping support the channel, but you would also get some of your new favorite products along the way. Thank you so much to Sleeve Chief for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to what we were talking about before. All right, so as we're going through this, we're going to start off with the tier 1 cards. These are cards that are viable in very good decks kind of right out of the gate or upcoming in OP10 or OP10. I'm never going to get that right. Or they're just generically good cards that are cards that could come back in the scene within future sets. So the first card that we're going to talk about in tier 1 is Uta. Now, even though this isn't really played in Shanks decks, right? I don't actually even recommend that you play this in a lot of different Shanks builds. This is a 1-drop top 5 searcher. Just generically a really good card if red-haired pirates goes to a form where they have more red-haired pirates within the deck and need this 1-drop searcher. This is going to be the first card that people flock to, so make sure to go get this and have a play set. Now, Shanks, one of the better SRs in this set, is an immediate 4 of in a lot of OP09 Shanks decks heading into the format. Not only is it a 12,000 power rush character, but it allows every character on the field to have minus 1,000 power, which actually fixes a good lot of math, forcing your opponent to have more counter cards, blockers, be KO'd by different other attackers on your field, etc. This is a great SR. It's actually pretty cheap. The set is decently cheap in general. I would make sure to have 4 of this. Now, Silver's Rayleigh I've also put in the tier 1 category. Silver's Rayleigh, no matter kind of the build that we've seen in the Eastern 09 meta of Shanks, Rayleigh has been in pretty much every deck, even though it's a Roger pirate card, right? Not a red-haired pirate card. So it's pretty reasonable as this 5-cost 6,000 power blocker with a good on play effect. If it's already present in Shanks, right, it could be present in other red decks as well that come in and succeed because I mean, it's just a really good blocker. This is definitely a good one. Now, just like Silver's Rayleigh, I think Ben Beckman is a generically good SR character, right? It's just a good red character to have in that mid-range kind of time, especially with that on-play effect of specifically trashing a character. The key word there is trashing a character, which is different than KOing. If you've heard my last couple of videos kind of talk about that, you could see this Ben Beckman in a lot of different decks heading into the game. 6,000's also a pretty good number, especially when you talk about the likes of like Doflamingo and stuff like that that are running rampant in the format for who knows how long now at this point. There's just a pretty good guy to get. Hongo here, just a really good 2K in terms of the Shanks red-haired pirates. Every single Shanks deck will play this Hongo right as a 4 of basically, so definitely want to add this to your list. Just, I mean, honestly, he's just really a 2K. Now, the same goes for Lime Juice, but Lime Juice has a little bit more value, in my opinion, than Hongo, right? Having that on-play effect of announcing a 4,000 power or less blocker, not being able to activate blocker in a battle. We've even seen it in the Japan tournaments, right? The Japan CSs that we do English commentary for on the channel. We've even seen some of those games end with a Lime Juice effect, right? Really good into like Rebecca decks. Even kind of nice with some of the power minusing stuff that you have. You can minus one of the characters and then use Lime Juice to make sure that they can't say blocker. Even something like Purple Luffy, I would say. Purple Luffy playing 2-drop Nico Robin's really nice to get around with that. But all in all, it's a good one. Now, Lucky Roo, I really wanted to put in tier 2, right? Especially at the later half of the Eastern meta, we saw Lucky Roo really fall out of different decks. Even though it's a good 5,000 power blocker, has a great on KO effect, right? Being able to KO 6,000 power characters. Just being a 4-cost in the format right now is just not good. Right, Blackbeard can counter this easily, Doflamingo can counter this easily, and those are kind of the top 2 decks that are running the game right now. We even talked about Ben Beckman, right, earlier in maybe like a mirror match, being able to trash this character. But because this card saw success in the beginning of 09 in the East, and I know some Western players really favor this card, I'm going to put it in the tier 1 category because I think it's good, but it's just not the right time for this. So maybe if the format changes a little bit, you could see this. Now, we got to scroll down a little bit for this next tier. We're going to talk about Perona. So Perona, just like the Uta, in my opinion, just a really good 1-drop searcher. That's pretty much it, right? Able to grab a Thriller Bark Pirate card or even Dracul Mihawk is going to be really, really good for green-black Perona, right? Especially with that kind of nuance with the Dracul Mihawk. Perona can now play something like the 3-drop Mihawk, which is really, really cool. The downside, though, to this, which is a little bit weird, is that Perona has to trash a card after picking up a card. Now, that was a short stop in green, and I promise we'll have some other colors later that will spend a little bit more time in the tier 1 category. But moving into blue now, this Crocodile, I would argue that this Crocodile is debatably one of the best blue cards in the set, right? Not only is it good in Buggy loved cheating out characters, spamming the board down with these kind of high powerful characters from a cost of like 5 to 10. Crocodile definitely fulfills that role, especially with the 1K counter on it, right? It's not a brick in your hand. The reason that I want to include it, though, in the tier 1 category, there's not a lot of cross-guild cards in this category because we just don't know when that 7-drop Buggy Shonen Jump promo is coming in English, if we are getting it at all. Is this also not only plays cross-guild characters, but also Baroque work characters with a cost of 5 or less. So I can see this being viable in multiple different decks, right? The first one that I can think of is Blue Purple Croc, right? It's a little bit of cope, I get it. But if that deck has any viability whatsoever, imagine being able to ramp into this 7-drop right here, and also on the turn playing a 5-drop, right? We talk about Purple Luffy, how Luffy Taro is so good, right? Being able to play like 5-cost Sangoro, or, you know, the 4-cost Zorojuro or something, a 5-cost or less. Crocodile can do that same exact thing, especially because something like the Luffy Taro, right, can only play a purple Straw Hat type character. Crocodile can play any character that's either cross-guild or Baroque works. It has way more flexibility than the Luffy Taro, and although Purple Luffy is just a much better deck, right, I will admit that, I do think this card is really good. This is a cheap SR and probably a cheap alternate art too. Akira Gawa making the alternate art look so good. I'm going to be getting these. It's going to be one of the first cards I get actually a playset of. Now, Nami I'm putting in the tier 1 category because this is immediately slotted into every single Nami deck that I've ever seen since OP09 released, right? Has that excellent when attacking of finding one of your event cards is literally going to be a hit every single time it attacks. So if your opponent can't get rid of it on the turn that you play it, right? Especially if you play this on your first turn of the game, right? Going first, play this down for your 1 dawn turn and then pass. What are they going to do? They can't do anything to it, right? It's going to punish it. It's going to be able to more than likely pick out a card from your deck, right? Go 1 card lower while also organizing your bottom and giving you more information on how to close out the game. Very powerful card. Mr. 3. So Mr. 3 is also kind of in that category that I was talking about with the Uta and Perona. Just general one-drop searchers are pretty good within the game. Now, this is a little bit different than the Perona and the Uta. Looks at the top 4, and we've seen top 4s be excellent in different decks, right? Like the Big Mom Pirates, that one-drop Pudding, right? Top 4 is a very, very good card, and that's a pretty good card that can find Big Mom Pirates and Sanji cards, right? Mr. 3, similar to that 7-drop Crocodile, finds a wider range of different cards, right? Finding Cross Guild or a type including Baroque Works, which has so much flexibility. And again, I think about like the purple blue Crocodile, right? If that deck has a little bit of viability, right, it's definitely going to play this card. I can think of multiple decks that want to play this card. And then if they ever do anything more, because there's actually, it's so depressing actually that purple yellow Robin is not former Baroque Works. If I'm being honest, it's so demoralizing, and this card wouldn't play it anyways. Okay, rant over. Moving on to purple. All right, so purple Sanji, kicking off one of the more dominant colors, I would say, in here, is a great rush card for a lot of different decks. I have seen just about every single purple deck play this card, whether you're Foxy, right, purple Luffy, purple black Luffy, red purple Luffy, like, this is just a really, really good card. It's basically a Dawn -1 unless you're purple black Luffy, then it's Dawn -2. You gain rush, you rest a blocker or an important 6 cost character. 6 is a huge number, I feel like. And you go ahead and swing 7,000 power at least. Is a pretty doggone good card. 1-drop Law joins the searches in this set in the tier 1 category. This also looking at the top 4, but it has to grab a cost 2 or greater Straw Hat or Heart Pirate type and put it in the hand. This way you're able to get Trafalgar Law cards, but not the 1-drop searcher. Like, you can't loop that. That's kind of how the wording is really weird, but it has incredible flexibility in different purple decks, especially with Straw Hat Crew Heart Pirates types. And if Heart Pirates ever kind of makes a comeback within the meta, this card definitely going to be on the forefront. Now, if you've been following along in our Japan commentary videos or anything like that, you know that this card is absolutely broken. Gum Gum Giant. This is debatably one of the best cards to come in the set, right? As a 1 Dawn counter event that has that Dawn -2 plus 4,000 draw 2 cards. It's an excellent combination of getting out of different attacks while also being able to draw cards, and especially in the late game, right? When you're like at a 10 Dawn turn, you go ahead and do this. You put 2 Dawn back, you're going to get to 10 Dawn next turn anyway, so who cares if you put 2 Dawn back? So just has a lot of flexibility in general within a lot of different decks. I've even seen like Robin decks play this card, and Robin decks, it's just that good of a card. I think this card originally, when it was teased, was supposed to have a trigger on it in Japan, and then when it was printed, people are like, wait, this doesn't have a trigger on it, and I'm so thankful it doesn't have trigger. I'm glad they nerfed it. All right, so now the black cards. We're going to talk about Von Augur, and basically there's a lot of black cards in the tier 1 category because, well, Blackbeard in general, the synopsis of this video, it's a freaking good deck. It's honestly one of my top decks, especially coming out of OP09. It's very difficult to pilot, but once you nail it down, once you know your matchups inside and out, this deck is so strong, and it's actually really tight as well. So the pieces that are in it are like that in every single list, and Von Augur is to start out with. Has an excellent opportunity to do a little bit of power minusing and then do a little bit of support in being KO'd, right? Drawing a card. Really good sustainability for Blackbeard decks. Jesus Burgess, one of the best black cards and one of the best cards in the set in my opinion, especially for Blackbeard. Gains 1,000 power in Blackbeard decks every 4 cards in your trash. So we've seen in some of the Japan tournament videos, this Burgess reach 10,000, 11,000 right in games. It's so good in the late game and can't be KO'd by effects. The only thing that can get rid of it is the Ben Beckman, because the Ben Beckman, but it has to do it at the beginning of the game because Burgess will gain power, right, and will pass the 6,000, nerfing Beckman, and just too many names with a B. Sure, you an excellent 2K in the game, and if things are tough, you know that Dawn ×1 when attacking allows you to kind of filter your hand, find some of the pieces that you need within Blackbeard, but more often than not, this is just a really good 2K. Stronger, very similar, just a really good 2K within this deck. Also has the ability to kind of draw cards a little bit, and also alongside that, do some cost minusing, which is good, but most often than not, 2K. Now, Doc Q, a really good card, especially in combination with some of the cost minusing effects that you have, has that activate main of resting and KOing different characters on the field, and also just like that Von Augur, like I mentioned, drawing a card when it gets KO'd. This card's really good. We've seen in some of the tournament matches that we've watched what happens when you leave this Doc Q on the field, right? And especially as a rare, you might not pull a full play set out of your boxes, so make sure you go out, maybe buy a single or two. It's not going to be that expensive, and make sure you have a play set. Now, I'm still baffled in all honesty that this is a card, Marshall D. Teach, but it is one of the best cards in the set, and it's arguably one of the best cards in the game, right? Being a 10-drop, 12,000 power blocker with an activate main of not only negating an effect on a character, but telling that character that it can't attack until your opponent's next turn, or the end of your opponent's next turn, my apology, but also negating the effect of a leader, so turning off the different leader effects like Nami, Anel, right? I'm just shocked that this card doesn't have counter on it, right? Because it seems like they were trying to make the best card in the game. It's crazy to me the price of this card as well, because literally at the time of this recording in USD, you can get this card on TCG Player right now at a market price of $4.37, and it's a playset in every single Marshall D. Teach deck. Now, granted, it's only restricted to Marshall D. Teach decks, right? Not really anything else should play it, in my opinion. Some decks do. I don't know if it's the right idea, but mainly just Blackbeard decks. But Blackbeard going to be very popular, going to be very good, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. Get a playset of this card. Lafitte, a very nice card, a very exquisite name, I will say, in the Blackbeard Pirates pool of cards in this tier 1 category, is just very good, right? Being able, essentially like a Bonnie type character where you rest the character and a Dawn with that activate main and search for a Blackbeard Pirates type card. Very good for searching, and especially kind of in the early game, you can play this guy down and do a little bit of mixing and matching and stuff like that. Very nice for your leader effect, especially if it is able to stick around for a turn, right? Maybe your opponent ignores it a little bit. Can give you a lot of value. So I mean, I really like Lafitte. Now, this card officially labeled My Era Begins. The screenshots, I get my screenshots from OPTCG Sim, so it still has kind of the old verbiage before we got the official wording on what it was, but just a good 1-drop searcher event. That's pretty much it. Just a good 1-drop searcher event. Now, again, the wording's a little bit off on this one. This one is called Black Hole, right? Liberation is going to be a card that comes in OP10. We'll talk about that in the future. But Black Hole, right? This is a very good card played as a playset in Blackbeard from OP9 to OP10 so far. This is so good, right? Being able to negate an effect on any character, right? It could be a 4-cost or less, so then you end up KOing it with this Black Hole card, or it could be even a 7-drop, a 10-drop, right? Being able to negate any effect on a character, just so good within this deck and the game to be able to control the board. Also, pretty good trigger, I will say, and has some really funny interactions, especially with like Vegapunk. And the last black card within this set, it is a stage card, not an event card. It is full lead in here. It's basically a 1-cost stage that allows you to search, right? Very good card within this deck. Again, played in every single one and allows you to find a lot of your key pieces, do a ton of cycling. We've even seen Blackbeard games in the Japan Championships completely cycled through their deck because of Lafitte's, because of Full of Leads, because of My Era Begins, different searching effects that they have within the game. Just so good. Now, Nico Robin moving into a shortstop in yellow. Nico Robin kind of being the only tier 1 yellow card in my personal opinion. You get a play set of these. Very, very nice on a 6 Dawn turn, right? Your opponent has 3 or more life cards. Trash one of the top life cards from their life. Just so good in my personal opinion, and is played in a lot of different decks, right? It is a Straw Hat Crew type character, but we see it played in a Nell, I believe. We see it in OP10 with Eustace Captain Kidd, and generally any yellow deck I think has the potential to play this card, especially with that 1k counter. It's just a very, very good to be able to burn life. Now, bold secret rares are very good within this set, but Goldie Roger is actually the first card that I'm going to recommend in this buy list video that you don't actually need a full playset of, right? I have not seen really any deck consistently play more than 2 of this card at a single time. This card, though, is just very, very good, right? 10 cost, 13,000 power. I think it's the strongest character in the game, if my memory is correct, right? That Marshall D. Teach was 10 cost, 12,000 power, so beats that. Has Rush on top of that being the strongest character in the game. And if you or your opponent has 0 life and your opponent activates blocker anytime within the turn after this character is played down, you literally just win the game. It's an insane card. I also can't believe that they printed this card. The power creep is nuts in this game, but thankfully for a lot of people's wallets, you only need 2 of this in your collection, in my personal opinion. Now, if they make a whole Roger Pirates type, right, because we saw that Silver's Rayleigh earlier that we talked about, now like this Goldie Roger, there might be a Goldie Roger leader eventually, and maybe a whole archetype dedicated to Roger Pirates or Pirate King. Think about this card potentially in the future being searched. That's crazy. Now, Monkey Day Luffy Secret Rare is not as good as Roger, but I do see this card more frequently be a 3 of or so in different decks. It's kind of spotty. Some decks play like a 1 of, but some decks play 3 or 4. It's really just kind of how your deck is built and what you're trying to do. So might as well just get a whole playset of this. It is a very good card, right? Being able with that on play on a 9 Dawn turn to just put a Dawn back, draw a card, and gain Rush for the turn. You're going to hit 10 Dawn next turn anyway, so might as well do it. And if you've got different stuff like Eustace Captain Kidd, right? You get that Dawn right back as active. You have the purple black Luffy leader. You get 2 Dawn back, right? 1 being active. There's a high amount of potential with this card in a lot of different decks. Very good secret rare. Honestly, a better secret rare than the 10 drop Luffy that we got in OP05. Although the wanted poster on that card is so cool. And now we're going to move into tier 2. So tier 2 are a lot of cards that I think are good, and they're viable and played in some very cool decks, but they're not like over the top, right? They're not in the tier 1 decks. They're not an automatic 4 of in tier 1 decks, including this Building Snake, right? Building Snake is a card that we see on and off in Shanks. And I know I put the Lucky Roo within there, but I think Lucky Roo, based on the format, is more likely to be in a Shanks deck in comparison to Building Snake, which I think is just kind of a deck design choice in general, right? We've seen this guy. It's basically a Gordon Raismax reprint, but now for red-haired pirates. I put it in tier 2 because it's just, it depends on what you want to do. Now, Yasop was hyped in the beginning in Shanks decks, but in the latter half, we've really seen Yasop fall off. And I know I said the same thing with Lucky Roo, right? But the West hasn't really favored Yasop in any of their decks, even though with that on play, you get the 1,000 power on your leader, and then you get to do some minusing with that when attacking. I think just Blackbeard being super prevalent has essentially nerfed this card in a sense in a lot of different Shanks decks, right? Not being able to get that on play effect a lot of those games just hurts it a lot. So I would just kind of keep this card in your back pocket. Now, jumping back into green, we got a Dio, I believe his name is, of the Odyssey type, right? This SR is super cheap, so you can get a playset of this pretty easily. I have seen this in all of the Limb decks, right? And OP10 Limb is better. It's kind of interesting how good it is in OP10 comparison to what it is in OP09. So a lot of these Limb cards are going to be in the tier 2 category, and I would honestly recommend kind of getting them sooner rather than later if you plan on getting the most bang for your buck, right? Saving the most money, because this is going to be a guy once OP10 releases, right? And Limb becomes more viable, right? In the format, he's going to jump up a little bit. Maybe not by much, maybe just like $1 or $2, but on a playset, that could be like $4 to $10 difference. Now, this Sabo is something that I see in every single Lim deck as well, as that 5 cost works perfectly with Lim's leader effect and has that when attacking. If you have 3 or more rested characters in play, draw 1 card, especially as your last attacker of the turn, right? And having to play out different characters as rested. This Sabo has great synergy with the rest of what you're trying to do, right? 3 rested characters is not hard for a Lim deck, especially when you get to cheat them out through your leader effect and also ramp on top of that after you cheat them out. Don't underestimate Lim. She may not be making noise now, but she's going to make noise in 10. And Doflamingo, another one of those cards that's in every single Lim deck, right? Is a nice blocker that you can cheat out, and then at the end of your turn, 2 or more rested characters set this as active. If you thought 3 was easy, right, with the Sabo, 2 is even easier with the Doflamingo, especially because the characters that enter play are considered rested, right? So Doflamingo, you just need 1 other character on the field to be able to stand this guy up. If you go ahead and play this Doflamingo on the turn, right, comes in as rested, you just need 1 other rested character on the field. It could be a searcher, it could be anything. Very easy to restand this guy. Now, Ace in a similar situation with the 2 or more rested characters. You rest one of your opponent's 5 cost or lower characters. So especially with Lim's effect, right, being able to play this character on a 3 Dawn turn. For 3 Dawn, you could go in and try to go for lethal, right, resting a 5 cost or lower blocker. And newsflash, if you did not know, because Lim plays their characters on the field as rested, right, this Ace counts as one of your rested characters in this effect. So you can only need 1 more guy on the field that is rested to be able to get this effect off. Just so good, especially when you have access to like different small bodies on the field. This Luffy is similar to the Ace, pretty prevalent in most all Lim decks that I've seen, whether it's 09 or 10. This one being able to rest a 6 cost or lower character or one of your opponent's Dawn. So you have multiple cards that are able to rest 5 or 6 cost characters. My apologies. Just so good. Lim is such a crazy deck. I'm going to make a video on it. Now, this SR Lim, similar to the Adio, is going to be a cheap SR for you. You look at the top 5 cards, find an Odyssey card, one of the good searchers, right? And then being able to set the character as active at end of turn. Yeah, I mean, it's a good SR. Now, onto the horrid names of these Odyssey event cards. Thunderlance, Flip, Pound, Phoenix Shot. I hate it here. This is probably the most consistent event outside of like Blast Breath that I see within Lim decks, right? Has that on the main. If you have 2 or more rested characters, you KO a 4 cost or less. Just a good card for 3 Dawn, being able to KO a 4 cost character, and also with a nice trigger, being able to rest 4 cost or lower characters is pretty good in this format, right? KOs Doflamingo stuff like crazy, and then on the trigger, rest the Doflamingos. You can also rest on the trigger like the Burgesses on the Marshall D teaches attacks. Just pretty good, I think. Moving more into blue, a lot of the buggy stuff is going to be in the tier 2 as well. And although I don't really recommend buggy right now in the format, because again, we don't know when that 7-drop promo Shonen Jump buggy is coming in, I wouldn't really play the deck without it. There are deck lists that did have some sort of success in like shop level tournaments in the East that you can find on One Piece top decks that don't have that buggy in it. So if you're looking to play buggy, you know, I know it's some people's favorite character and one of their favorite leaders. It is a cool leader, I will admit. Kabaji is definitely one that you want to have a play set of. Just a really good 2K, and then you can even have it in battle if you want, and can't be KO'd in battle as long as you have a buggy or emoji in, which most of the decks play emoji. Now, Dracul Mihawk, another great SR for the buggy deck, is not as good as Crocodile, but with that blocker on the on play of draw 2, trash 1 is great for being able to maintain your hand size, right? It's a net 0 kind of card instead of -1 on like a draw 2, trash 2 effect. 7,000 power blocker that you can cheat out. Pretty good in my personal opinion. I like this card. It's definitely in every single buggy list. This 10-drop buggy, one of the funniest cards in the game in my personal opinion. I like this card. Being able to cheat this guy out and potentially have to put him at the bottom of the deck, and also the interaction with Blackbeard when they take away on play effects. You can just literally on a 5-Dawn turn play a 12,000 power character. Absolutely insane in the matchup. It's just a really good 10 cost card that is so consistent within these buggy decks that they like to play. You got Moji as well, another good 2K within the buggy deck that is easily searchable from that Mr. 3 like I talked about earlier, or that 1 cost event. Actually, we'll talk about the 1 cost event later, but there's a 1 cost search event. Spoiler alert. You don't really play the on play effect for Moji because I don't know any of the buggy decks that play Richie, unfortunately. So you just kind of use this as a 2K, right? You have a 2K with some on play viability, but you have other 2Ks that don't. That's fine, they're just 2Ks. And then Mr. 1 Daz Bones. Even though it's a vanilla character, right, being able to cheat this guy out or even play on the Crocodile, right? Think about on the Crocodile. You get to cheat out a 5 cost or lower character. Great synergy with this Daz Bones. You literally on a 5-Dawn turn, actually. 5-Dawn turn, you play the 7,000 power Crocodile through your buggy leader effect, and then through the Crocodile effect, you play down the Daz Bones. So on a 5-Dawn turn, you get 12 Dawn worth of value and 2 7,000 power characters on the field. Cracked. Now, going into a little bit of purple, Nico Robin is a pretty good card, I will say, within this set, but you really only need 2 of them. I think it's really only played in purple Luffy as a 2-of, so especially if you open a booster box, if you open a booster box at all, you've already got this. It's also a common, so probably your locals will honestly just give them to you for free if you're friendly with a couple different people. So this card's pretty good, don't get me wrong. It's a 2-drop blocker, is great, has good synergies with other things, but it's just, I mean, it's a 2-drop blocker. Not crazy. Now, this Roronoa Zoro I've got in the tier 2 category, right? Because it is not even extremely prevalent in the deck that I think it's most compatible with in the purple black Luffy, right? Not all purple black Luffys play this card. It is a brick. You don't play it on the early game. Like, are you really worried about playing it at all, right? It's just kind of dead in your hand at the mid to late kind of stages of the game. So it's kind of a finicky card for a lot of different people, but it is still good, especially with that purple black Luffy. Being able to return to Dawn, activate your leader effect, and get another Dawn as active is a way to ramp up this guy, and is honestly one of the only other ways I think to be able to physically ramp, unless you have like a Eustace Captain Kidd and you play it later in the game because you don't have any of your big bodies to play. Now, Vasco Shot, you could argue that you don't need a full playset of this, but just like the Robin, it's a common 2-drop blocker, so if you open a booster box, you at least have 3 of them, right? But Vasco Shot just much more prevalent, I think, because of Blackbeard being so good and such a tight deck in general. Definitely want this. Vasco Shot is a good card that sees a ton of play in the Blackbeard decks, is a very good one, and you know what? Just get a playset. I'm going to include Karasu in here in the tier 2 category because, like some of the other kind of yellow cards, this is every single Bello Betty deck, right? Being able to have blocker and then also have that nice trigger on it of being able to play the card. You or your opponent are at 5 life or less. 5 is kind of a good number, right? It just only needs 3 on one side, 2 on the other. Not bad. It's just a decent, cheap card to play down on the field, get value, and potentially swing with later if you want through the Bello Betty leader effect, and synergizes well with that Bello Betty leader effect. Now, Koala is an interesting card because it's not in every single Bello Betty deck, but I think it's also pretty viable within Red Yellow Sabo, right? Red Yellow Sabo loving different cards like this, being able to cheat out a different character that you like to maybe put in life later, and also drawing a card on top of that really helps the deck that just doesn't draw cards, right? Red Yellow Sabo just doesn't draw. Now, not going to sit here and say that Red Yellow Sabo is a tier 1 deck, right? It's in my cope category like purple blue Crocodile, but I think it's got viability in a couple different places, which is just really cool for a card like that. Mr. Bartholomew Kuma, similar to the Karasu, in every single Bello Betty deck, and so definitely want to play this card. It's kind of a vanilla, but also a 2K and has that nice trigger, which just, it makes Bello Betty more consistent, which is a crazy thing to say. And for the final card of the tier 2 category, Bello Betty, right? Has that same kind of 5 or less life trigger, and then also with an on play of drawing a card is just a nice one to have in general and is in almost every single Bello Betty deck. So make sure to get this. I know there's a lot of Bello Betty fans out there. Now we've got the tier 3 category, which is interesting because it's like, these are cards that I saw a flash of at one point in different decks that won in the Eastern meta, or maybe some people talk about them, or like these cards just have to be viable sometime, right? I mean, they have to be at least options for deck building. And this Come On We'll Fight, or the official translation I think is Come We'll Take You On. This is your 1-drop searcher event, right? For red-haired pirates. So if they don't want to play Uta for any reason, I don't know why, they can go ahead and play this card. It's a nice searcher. Now, Sakazuki I recommend as a 3 of. So this is very on and off in Lim. Some people play it, some people don't. There will be spurts where I see it in a lot of decks, and there will be spurts where I don't see it in a lot of decks. Does have value of being able to KO a rested 5 cost or lower character, right, with that on play effect. Very similar to the Ace, the Luffy that we talked about earlier. But I think just costing 6, not having counter on it, just doesn't give it the same value as some of the other cards within the deck. Now, the next couple cards that I'm going to talk about, these next 3, right, Sanji, Rosinante, and Robin, spoiler alert, they're all going to be cards that I have in the tier 3 category, but they're very barely in the tier 3 category. It's because I see them played in the OP09 lim version, but then the OP10 lim version immediately drops them, right? Because more Odyssey cards come out, better Odyssey cards come out, so they get dropped. So don't stress if you don't have these, if you're just going to wait for Lim in OP10, but if you want to play Lim now, because it is a fun deck, yeah, add this Sanji in there, a couple of them, just 2. You can also add this Rosinante in the deck, and it's a nice blocker, right? But as a 3-drop blocker, it doesn't really fit as well in the format as something like Doflamingo being a 5, because 3 is easily susceptible to be able to get rid of pretty easily. And finally, this Nico Robin. Now, this is an interesting one that I've seen in a couple different decks as like a 3 or 2 of. It gives a protection effect to your opponent's effects if they would be KO'd. So it's really cool to see that on this one. Has a little bit of flexibility in some different matchups, but again, it's one of those cards that just get immediately dropped once OP10 comes out. So Gum Gum Quattro Mono Jet Cross Shock Bazooka. I see this in OP9 and 10. Sometimes people like playing this 1-cost counter event. Basically, just give yourself plus 2,000 power. That's it. Or you KO a rested 4-cost or lower character, which could be good in the Doflamingo matchup. That's basically all it is. Now, Alvida is in the similar category as like these other kind of tier 3 lim cards where like it's present right now, but then once we get the 7-drop promo, you just drop it from the deck, you take it out. But has a really cool on KO effect, right? Being able to play a 5-cost or lower character card from your hand that's not named Alvida is really cool synergy with the buggy deck of just continuously being able to pump out different characters on the field to force a problem on your opponent, right? Think of using Alvida if it gets KO'd in any way, right? It could be by an effect, it could be in battle, and playing down a 5-drop Daz Bones that we talked about earlier. Just, I don't know, it's pretty decent. And then I alluded to this card earlier, the Cross Guild Searcher event. It's just a 1-drop, look at the top 4 Searcher event, find Cross Guild, put the rest of the bottom of the deck in any order. Just good. It's played on and off in the buggy decks. You can choose to play it if you want for like more searching options, or honestly, you can take it out. I don't know if there's like truly a right or wrong answer. It's just kind of how your deck's built. I mean, if you like the trigger and you like getting different effects off trigger, then yeah, go ahead, play this card. Karai Bari Island, I think it's called. This is also a card that I see on and off in different buggy decks. You can choose to play it or you can choose not to. It's just a nice stage in the buggy decks to be able to filter your hand, right? Put 2 cards at the bottom of the deck and then draw 2 cards. Could be pretty nice for kind of finding some of your combo pieces with things like Alvida or the Crocodile, right? Just pretty good. Now, I'm probably going to get some angry comments down below on this. Frankie, Frankie, but I don't see this Frankie in every single purple black Luffy deck, which I think is like the premier deck to play this card in, right? It is not always in there. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong, because the on play effect, right? You get to discard one card and then draw two, basically yet again like another net zero card like that Dracula Mihawk. But I think in combination with like Blackbeard taking away on play effects, right, this just being a blocker on the field, which is very easy to get rid of with the black hole event, and also just Doflamingo, like being a 4 cost in general in this format is just so bad. And so 4-drop blockers, I hate 4-drop blockers unless it's like Boa Hancock, so I don't think I can really recommend it. Now Beppo is a card that I see on and off in some decks, is a nice 2K, right? Being able to give your leader plus 1000 power. It's not something that I see too often, so if you don't have this for your deck, don't worry about it. It is a common, so you probably opened up a playset, but it is kind of a neat card, especially if Minx goes into purple, right? We've seen Minx type in green, and so if they start developing some stuff in purple, could be a really, really cool option, and even with maybe a Heart Pirates comeback, right? Now, this card officially being called Gum Gum Thunder, I believe, is a card that I see every so often in, you know, different purple decks. It's usually just a 2 of, so you don't need a lot of these, but being able to KO a 6000 power or lower character is really effective and really good, right? We've talked about how 6000 power is just a good number right now in the format, and this situation is no different. And being able to do that with 2 Dawn, pretty good in my opinion, especially with that 2 Dawn that you rest, you can immediately put back as your Dawn -2 and maybe get back later with either Eustace Captain Kidd and Pudding, or like your purple black Luffy leader effect. It's just, I don't know, this is a good card. So Charlotte Pudding, this is my biggest cope card, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little bit of insight of why I have this card right here. You may be thinking, Jake, why are you including this card at all? No deck is going to play this card. This card is bad, yada, yada, yada. This 2-drop Charlotte Pudding has the ability to trash a card from the opponent's hand. We've seen this effect have value in a lot of different decks, right? The 4-cost Perona, the Thriller Bark Pirate 2K is the first one that comes to mind. This eventually has good synergy with Gecko Moria, which is awesome, right? Sometimes you don't know what to do with your 2-drop slot, right, on the Gecko Moria. So being able to do this and then be able to trash a card from your opponent's hand, pretty good. But we know that OP11 is going to be themed around, what is it, like Whole Cake Island or something like that? I forget the official wording of it. And here in OP09, we've started to see a sliver of Black Big Mom Pirates, right? We already know that we have a leader of Black Yellow Charlotte Linlin. So I don't know, wouldn't surprise me if Black Big Mom Pirates makes a surge within OP11, and you could see this card be at the forefront in some of the stuff, because let me tell you, they're not banning Gecko anytime soon. They would have done it already. Now, Black Spiral, this is a cope card for you chatters, you commenters, because you tell me that this card is very good. And I would agree that the card is good, right? Nullifying and opponent's leader or character, give it minus 4000 power. But you really only say that because you hate Nami with a burning passion. Nobody plays this card. Don't play this card. But I put it in here so then I get less comments about leaving the card out. Now, coming into the home stretch, we have Yellow Kuzan. So this Kuzan, just a 2 of, I saw this for a brief moment in the first introductions of OP09 Black Yellow Luffy. Being able to remove a character from the field, right, even though it's a little low in the 3 cost or less, could be viable in a lot of different situations and forces your opponent to trash a card from hand. Could be good in a lot of different matchups, and especially, again, with synergy with Gecko and also being a 4 cost. It's a good card, and especially if Yellow Navy comes more into the mix. We don't really have a lot of Yellow Navy, I feel like, right now, but this could be something that comes in. It has counter on it. It's a 5000 power character and removes a character off the field. That is not bad. Now, for you Vegapunk enjoyers, this card's for you, right? This has a excellent trigger, in my opinion. If you're a fan of Vegapunk, you want to add this to your deck. Not only being a 5 cost, so you can put this in play play or in your life through leader effect, you can add the top card from your deck to the top of your life and then discard 2 cards. And with the way that this is ruled and worded, if you don't have 2 cards in your hand when you're enacting this trigger, that's fine. Just discard the 1 card that you have in your hand. You still get the life. So pretty interesting card in my personal opinion. Wanted to throw that in there for you all. Now, Nico Olivia or Olvia. Olvia, it's not Olivia. Nico Olvia, for all you Nico Robin enjoyers, I see you. I'm Nico Robin enjoyer. This is a 2K that you want to have in your deck. And with that on play, it's pretty good, giving your leader 3,000 power with a draw 3 trash 2 trigger. That's pretty good. This is a 4 of in every single Robin deck that I've ever seen, right? Having great flexibility within the game. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So if you want to build Robin, go ahead, add that card. Similar to Nico Olvia, the Jaguar Soul card, also pretty much a mainstay in Robin decks. This kind of flexes from like 4 to 3. Just cool, cheap, 5,000 power blocker, right? 3 cost 5,000 is really efficient, I feel like, for a blocker. Also with a good trigger of if you're playing a Nico Robin deck, you go ahead and play the card. So I don't see any reason not to play this card, right? Especially if you're Nico Robin and have this card as an uncommon, very easy to get. Just go ahead, get a playset of it. Now, Dareshi, I really like this card, right? This event card, being able to look at the top 5, grab 2 different cards with triggers on it, and then put it in your hand is a really cool 3-drop search event with even the trigger of drawing a card. It's a really neat effect in my personal opinion, and I've even seen this in other decks, right? We even saw recently in the Japan Championships, we saw Anel playing this card. This could have a flexibility in a lot of different yellow decks, so I would have these handy in my personal opinion, and honestly a great one to round out the video in general. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. This video, as always, I feel like my buy list videos are long and comprehensive, but I hope you enjoy them and I hope you get a lot out of them. Let me know what cards you feel like you got scammed in this buy list in the comments below, but say it nicely or else. And yeah, I hope to see you in another video. Thanks.